Okay, this is a quick tutorial for uh, ChunkMerge. I'm going to go over this about as quick as I can, just to show you how to do it. First, though, there's a few things we need to know. We need to get ChunkMerge, which is now merged into something called NIF Utility Suite. And if you type NIF Tools into Google or something, you just find your way to the NIF Tools forum, and you can get an account. But we need to scroll down once we're on the forum main page and find Skyrim modding. And here is at the very top under announcements, we have NIF Utility Suite 1.2.2 released 12/23/13. And just click on this and you will be able to download it. And it basically comes with two folders, a docs folder and a bin folder, which you will find in here an executable. If you don't have the 3ds Max exporter, you could probably go ahead and use the one by Wix. He updated Figments. I was using Figments for a long time before I knew about this one. He fixed a number of bugs. You can read about it here on the Nexus and Skyrim Utilities. And it's for 3ds Max 8 through 2012, and I'm using 2012. It doesn't actually export BSX flags. It doesn't give you BSX flags whenever you export it, but that's fine. We can always steal them from another mesh. So once you have ChunkMerge, once you have the exporter, let's hop on over to 3ds Max, and here's the model that we're going to be using. This is going to be one piece. You can have a multiple piece set for when you get collision into your game. I'll explain that a little bit later, because sometimes, let's just say, like we wanted a few of these sides, right? We wanted this and this to be metal, and we wanted the legs to be stone, and this back and this seat to be wood. We can get we'd have to make a few different types of collision. Instead of making one collision piece, we would make 4 or 5, however many different material types we wanted. The importance of that is, if you walk over it, it'll play the correct footsteps. If you're walking on stone, it'll play the ones for stone. If you walk on wood, for wood, if you hit it with a weapon, it will play the correct sound based on the type of collision. And usually you'd want to break up these pieces of the mesh itself to correspond with it. But I don't think it's necessarily, you don't necessarily have to do that. You could, but okay, let's get going. Let's go into the Create tab, and I'm just going to create a box. I'm going to go in the top view, S, right click S, make sure the vertex is ticked, and I'm just going to draw this out right where it needs to be. We'll draw it up a little bit, left click again, that gives us this guy. We'll go into the front view. Let's convert it to an editable poly. Right click, convert to editable poly. 1 on the keyboard for vertex mode. We hit S again if you don't have your snap still on. We'll drag it down on the Y axis to the very bottom. Grab the top, verts. Same thing, somewhere around here. Actually, I tell you what, let's drop this down to the seed. So it looks like that. Okay. Now let's grab a Swift Loop tool. You're probably not following along, but I will show you anyways. So we have a very simple collision object over this. We could have taken the original mesh and just copied it and overlaid it on that, but as you can see, it's 1500 polys. We don't really want that many polys. We want to get the lowest cost collision that we can. And let's go ahead and drop this into a layer. I use vertex paint, so I've got vertex paint on here just to bring out the edges a little bit. We're going to export selected. Chair 01, I'm just going to replace this. I think on the Wix, this would be default. I have vertex color, so I need to have that ticked. Hidden nodes is ticked. We don't have a skin modifier. I don't think it'll, even if we had this on, I don't think it will export a skin modifier to it. It might. I'll collapse and update the tangent space and the transforms. BS fade node, Skyrim, export. Now we have this. Everything looks good. We will export selected to chair collision NIF, and it's got to be in the net immerse Gamebryo KF NIF. That's how we want to export it as a NIF. This doesn't have vertex colors, doesn't really matter. So now that we have this, we have our original model, and we have our collision object. Everything looks good. Let's go ahead and grab those. Chair 01 NIF. Since we'll be using ChunkMerge, we need to do a few things. This is your... we're not going to do too much to this, but you'll notice that it exported as a 9 node. We need this as a BS fade node. So we'll go and right click it, go under here under block, convert, Bethesda, BS fade node. I want to get rid of the BS lighting shader property because sometimes it doesn't export right and it won't go into game right, so we'll just have to copy that from another NIF. Control, delete. So now we have this. The only thing we have in here are the tri-shapes, the tri-shape data under the BS fade node root. We will save it as chair 01 clean. And let's open up the collision. Same thing here. Let's convert this to a BS fade node. I'm not sure this is exactly necessary, but I like to do that anyways because BS fade node is what goes into Skyrim. Now, when I was saying earlier about different material types, we could have broken this up if we wanted the lower part to be stone and the upper part to be wood. What would happen is if we exported that and there was two different meshes, say these weren't combined or welded together, and they were two distinct objects, there would be two Nye tri-shapes. And what we would do is here's the NIF tools page on actually using ChunkMerge. I'm making this tutorial because it's a little difficult to understand just by reading it. It's almost something like you have to see it, because this took me a number of hours to actually sort of understand. And I believe the tutorial is based on an older version of ChunkMerge. So if we come here, this is a good resource to use. And we scroll down to the bottom of the page, under the appendix, Skyrim Havoc material definitions. We want, you can get wood as stairs, broken stones, heavy grass, gravel. Pretty much, depending on what you're doing, you want to make sure you name these right. We just want heavy wood. Stupid mouse. We'll copy that. We'll go back into NIF scope in the collision, and let's come down here to the tri-shape block and left click where it says text right next to the actual name that we named it in 3ds Max, and we'll just control V, Skyrim Hazmat heavy wood. That way it'll be able to assign what material goes on to this specific collision object. So now that we have that, we will save it and open up the NIF utility suite. If you're just doing this, it's going to ask you a bunch of questions. You will have to go find the XML file. There will be an XML. There will be a path to your collision data. Or no, what it'll be is it'll first ask you for the NIF XML, and that's for NIF scope. So you want to go to your programs directory. It should be programs 86, x86, NIF tools, NIF scope, and in the NIF scope folder there'll be a NIF.xml, and that'll be the first line. The second line, right if you just start this up, the NIF tool utility suite up, will be it'll ask you for the Skyrim executable. So of course you'll go into program files, Steam apps, Common, Skyrim, and just click on the TESV executable. And the third thing will be the actual template folder. This can be any folder you want. But let me show you what we have to do for this to work. This is one of the most important parts. I have a folder just called NIF templates. If you go to this and you read this page under preparing template NIF, it says to find Skyrim vanilla NIF object that has similar same purpose as what you're trying to import, which I would say just sort of ignore that. What I would use is the Barrel 01. You'll have to get a BSA extractor and find this in one of your BSAs. It's literally called barrel01.nif. And what we want to do is we want to delete everything in here except the collision object. So we would come in and we would right click, block, remove branch, or control delete. So we would control delete the ny node, or both of these nodes with the tri-shapes in them. And we would name it to something else. So in the end, this is what we would get. I left the BSX flags on there, not that I think it really matters. But we're left with the BSFA node, BSX flags, and the collision object. So just the collision object, that's what we're looking for. This is the template you have to make out of the Barrel 01. The Barrel 01 will work for anything. Some of the vanilla NIFs, they don't have the right BHK, MOPP, BV tree shape. So you'll get an error in ChunkMerge. So just use the Barrel 01, make a barrel template, make a folder for your templates, call it whatever you want, and direct NIF Utility Suite to it. So that takes care of, and then I'll ask you a bunch of questions. You can just keep hitting next until we get to this page. And we needed to come over to the ChunkMerge tab, and the target file, of course, is, remember, the chair itself, not the collision object, but just the chair. That's the target file. That's what we're going to stick collision into. The next is the collision file itself, and that's what we created earlier. And the third thing, in the template folder, you can see all my templates. You're going to select the cleaned version of the Barrel 01. Under collision source, we want to make sure it's mesh data because it uses the tri-shapes of the model as source for the collision shapes. So the very simple collision mesh that you made will now be the exact mesh, the exact collision in form. And you want to make sure you click mesh data to achieve that. Now you'll notice that my NIF that I brought in, that I used, was only one object. It was a singular object. And so we didn't actually have to go in and change the name. Oops. See how we remember we changed this name to Sky Hazmat Heavy Wood, but see, since this is only one object, we don't really have to do that. If we don't want to, we can just come over to the collision material single and find whatever material floats our boat. But just for good practice, and because sometimes if you do have an object with a number of different havoc types that you want to name each of the tri-shapes as a material, and then you would come down and click the name of the tri-shape, and that will be the extent. And as you can see, it's successful. If you followed along and did the same thing, you will get a successful. Most of the time when you don't get a successful reading, it's because you didn't use the Barrel 01, or you didn't clean it right, or you didn't rename this file. So now that our collision has been put on here, here's our original target file, but now it's got the BHK mop BV tree shape on there. So it's essentially the same thing, except now it has collision on it. And you can't see the collision because it starts at runtime. But that collision object is perfectly there. Now let's go ahead and finish this out you'll notice that that new exporter did not give us a BSX flag node for a NIF. So we are going to need to steal one from somewhere else. You can just go pretty much find anything. Besides, use something. This is where you would want to use something that's close to what you're doing. Like, let's type in chair. Runes chair 01. That's not right. Let's... Chair 01A. I think these are custom models that I brought in. But what we're looking for, since I'm doing a chair, I want to find something with a BS furniture marker node and a BSX flag. So we're going to steal this. We're going to copy the branch. And we're going to come up here to the scene root, right click, block, paste. Now we have BSX flags on it. And now I'm going to steal the furniture marker, so that way I can, in game, I can actually sit in it. Same thing, come up to the root, block, paste. And I'm going to come in here into the tri-shape, and I'm going to steal the BS lighting shader property. And I'm going to come to the nitri shape now, and I'm going to paste it on there. And I'm going to hook up the diffuse and the normal. In the first and second slot. Well, there's actually a first one, but that comes over here. So, but this is the second one is actually the first. So diffuse goes here, normal goes here, then there's skin and glow and whatever else, environment maps. We're not using any of those. So this is the process of exporting out, getting in ChunkMerge. We've got the shape on there. We've got the furniture marker, and this is one of the reasons why it's important to have your pivot centered, effect pivot only centered object, and making sure that the entire mesh on the X and the Y is centered. And you want it, if you're doing a chair, you want it sitting directly on the 0 line. That way when you come into NIF scope and you add your BS furniture marker, it'll be in the exact right spot it needs to be. So now all you need to do is just add something in game. We'll duplicate a chair with it's got a chair icon next to it. We don't want to make it a static. We'll just duplicate this. I'll change the name. we need to get it in here first. There we go. Looking pretty good. Oh, I wonder why it didn't bring in my furniture marker. Very weird. Very weird. Maybe it's because I duplicated it. Anyways, that will then give you the model to put into your game, and of course sometimes you're gonna have to troubleshoot some things and go from there. But I hope that helped. Enjoy.